When powerful attorneys go after dirty cops, things get explosive. Here are jaw-dropping moments where dominant lawyers tore through police lies, starting with one legal beatdown that changed everything. On August 12, 2017, in Euclid, Ohio, 25-year-old Richard Hubbard III, a young black man from Cleveland, was pulled over for a traffic violation. He had allegedly rolled through a stop sign. The officer behind the stop was Michael Amiott, a white Euclid police officer already known for previous excessive force complaints. Hubbard was driving with a suspended license, and Amiott ordered him out of the vehicle. What followed next was caught on dashcam and body cam footage, and it was brutal. As Hubbard stepped out of the car, Amiott almost immediately tried to forcefully pin him down. Within seconds, Amiott was punching Hubbard repeatedly in the head and face, even as Hubbard appeared to be trying to comply. Hubbard was slammed to the ground, kneed, and struck again. Initially, the officer was suspended for 45 days and later fired, but he got his job back a year afterward. He was eventually arrested and charged in August 2019, though his trial was delayed for 2 years, in part due to the pandemic. During his trial, other cops testified to his aggressiveness.
I was fully convinced that there was some kind of illegal activity going on besides just driving under suspension. When Mr. Hubbard started using again, racial slurs, not being polite and things like that, that's an indicator to me that he's agitated.
Mr. Hubbard also addressed the court.
I appreciate the jury and the court for making the right decision. What Amiott did to me was wrong. He should receive the maximum sentences today. I'm still going through the suffering with the anxiety, driving, just the temperament, the trauma and everything, just a cause for this case. I'm ready to get it over it actually, but just coming back in here, just bring up everything, and just to see him over there, see all that, just coming back in this court, just it just brings up everything, we live in the moment. So, I hope he gets the maximum sentences today,
But Officer Amiott showed little to no remorse.
For or against use of force. Everything I did on that day was based on my training and experience.
Finally, in March 2023, Officer Michael Amiott received his sentence, though the court issued a 90-day jail term, a $1,000 fine, and costs. The judge suspended the jail time, opted for community control, and warned that the jail time could still be enforced if he violated the terms.
The evidence presented and the pre-sentence investigation. The court at this time will impose a sentence of 90 days, require you to pay a fine of $1,000, and will require you to pay the court costs. In addition, the court will suspend the sentence of 90 days, place you on non-reporting community control for a period of 1 year. If you violate during that 1 year, then the court will retain the ability to impose this.
The judge acknowledged that Amiott had abused his power and violated Hubbard's rights, but because so much time had passed, the court settled on an assault charge. The judge also admitted he was still disturbed that Amiott never once spoke to Hubbard directly. As the hearing ended, Amiott stood with raised hands as he was reprimanded before being taken into custody. The judge offered Hubbard a final thought. "Don't let this weigh you down." Letting go, he said, was the only way to take power back. The judge reasoned that Hubbard had already been wronged once and shouldn't let the officer wrong him again by living in that shadow.
I'm still troubled by the fact that you did not address Mr. Hubbard.
I can address it.
I know that's all right, Your Honor.
No, it's not all right.
I don't need it.
You do need it.
Range.
You say you can't move on. I'm telling you, you need to move on. Not easy. Life is not easy. But as long as you let that handicap you, he has control. As long as it handicaps you, he has control. You make that decision, sir. Do you want him controlling, or this situation to control you?
No.
Need to think about that. That's all.
Richard Hubbard filed a federal civil rights lawsuit against the city of Euclid and officers Michael Amiott, Matt Gilmer, and Kirk Pavkov following the violent 2017 traffic stop. In April 2021, the city agreed to a $450,000 settlement with Hubbard and Yolamar Tirado, who was in the vehicle at the time. However, this wasn't the only time a judge humbled a shady cop.
Why didn't you just get out of the car?
Because I was afraid. There was a cop on my left with a gun pointed at me, and there was one on my right side with a shotgun pointed.
In June 2012, Marcus Jetta, a black man from Bloomfield, New Jersey, found himself in the center of a nightmare that could have ended very differently, if not for a single piece of hidden evidence. Jetta had just had a domestic dispute with his partner, but no crime had been committed. After briefly leaving the scene in his car, a New Jersey state trooper began following him on the Garden State Parkway. Jetta eventually pulled over calmly, raising both hands, clearly signaling compliance. But what happened next was anything but standard procedure.
New Jersey DJ Marcus Jetta was arrested in this 2012 traffic stop and charged with eluding police, resisting arrest and assault. Prosecutors who saw this dashcam video wanted him to go to jail for years, but there was another dashcam video police hid from the prosecution.
Two Bloomfield police officers, Orlando Trinidad and Sean Corter, swarmed his car. Within seconds, Trinidad shattered the passenger side window with a shotgun, and both officers began punching Jetta through the broken glass. They dragged him out of the vehicle, pressed him to the ground, and cuffed him. All the while, Jetta never once struck back or lowered his hands. Despite this, police reports filed afterward painted a completely different picture. They accused Jetta of trying to grab a weapon, eluding police, and resisting arrest. He was charged with multiple felonies and faced up to 5 years in prison.
Pulled out their guns. Jetta didn't get out of his car because he was afraid. The cop on his right was pointing a handgun at him. The cop on his left had a shotgun.
But Jetta's lawyer, Stephen Brown, wasn't convinced. During the investigation, he asked the Bloomfield Police Department for all available footage of the incident. At first, the department provided only partial video, captured from one of the patrol cars, footage that supported the officer's narrative. But then, Brown learned of a second dashcam from another cruiser that had never been turned over. When he finally obtained it, the entire story changed. The missing footage clearly showed Jetta sitting calmly with his hands in the air as the officers attacked him. The video left no doubt the police had lied.
Second video was shown in court. All charges against Jetta were dropped. Bloomfield police officers Orlando Trinidad and Sean Corter have been indicted on various charges, including falsifying reports, conspiracy, and official misconduct. Trinidad was also charged with aggravated assault. They both pleaded not guilty. A third officer pleaded guilty to tampering.
Once prosecutors saw the second dashcam video, all charges against Marcus Jetta were immediately dropped. What followed was a rare and decisive move toward justice. Officers Trinidad and Corter were indicted on charges including official misconduct, falsifying public records, conspiracy, and aggravated assault. A third officer, Albert Sutherland, was also implicated. He pleaded guilty to tampering with evidence and resigned from the force.
Next thing I know, the glass gets busted.
Get out the car!
My hands are up. As soon as he opened the door, one of the officers reached in and just punched me in my face. And he's like, "Stop resisting arrest. Stop trying to take my gun."
Get down! Stop resisting! Stop resisting! Why are you trying to take my
When they opened the door about to put me in, the officer hits me in the back of the head.
One of the officers involved, Sean Carter, took the stand and asked the court for leniency. Fighting back emotion, he spoke of his children, saying he didn't want them to suffer for his mistakes. He'd already missed Christmas and his daughter's birthday, something that had never happened before. Until now, he'd never spent more than a day away from them. He begged the judge for the shortest sentence possible so he could return home and be the father they needed.
I love my children more than anything in the world, and I know they need me. I don't want them to have to suffer, switch schools, lose friends, lose the house that they're raised in. I don't want them to become emotionally scarred from me being away. You know, sorry, a lot of that stuff I haven't heard from my wife, and it kind of hit me. I haven't been away from my kids for more than a day, and since being incarcerated, I miss Christmas, I miss my little Sabrina's birthday, I miss my Kylie the Rose ride at bicycle, which I was practicing with her, and I also missed a lot of Boy Scout events for my son Connor. I love my kids and my family, Your Honor, and if you could please impose the least possible sentence so I can get back to supporting the race.
After the officer was done speaking, Jetta reminded him that he swore to tell the truth when he took the job. Instead of being honest, he made up a story about Jetta jumping through the car window and resisting arrest.
As a man of the law, there's an oath that they take, and it's to tell the truth. And in this situation, there was time given for Mr. Carter to tell the truth. He chose to say that I jumped out the back window. He chose to say that I pulled off on him. He chose to say that I resisted. He had a choice. I'm not saying that that messes his character up. I'm not saying that he's not a good guy. I'm just saying that in a situation like this where he has an obligation, a moral obligation to tell the truth.
In November 2015, a jury convicted Trinidad and Carter. Each received a 5-year prison sentence, a rare outcome in police brutality cases. The two officers tried to ruin Marcus Jetta's life with lies, but in the end, justice caught up with them. In 2016, the city of Bloomfield agreed to pay Marcus Jetta $1.6 million in a civil settlement. However, these were not the only officers who the law taught a lesson. On February 25, 2019, Joshua Underwood, a former deputy in Oceanee County, South Carolina, barricaded himself inside a residence after deputies arrived to enforce an eviction notice. When officers attempted to make contact, Underwood claimed he had a gun and refused to leave. A negotiation followed, and after several hours, he surrendered without incident. He was arrested and charged with resisting arrest. Days later, Underwood appeared in court for a bond hearing. As his lawyers pushed for a bond, Underwood's behavior in court only made things worse.
I'd like to hear from the solicitor's office and the sheriff's department before I make any decisions regarding bond for Mr. Underwood.
Yes, sir. May it please the court, Judge, just to clear up any issues regarding the warrant. The warrant is resisting arrest. However, I think what Mr. Underwood's maybe misunderstanding about that is that the resisting arrest also encompasses resisting the service of process or a writ. That is the specific portion that is being dealt with in this particular case. This situation arose when representatives from the sheriff's office went out to the residence where Mr. Underwood was staying and attempted to serve him with paperwork for an eviction. Mr. Underwood refused to accept that paperwork, so at that point, officers came back, obtained that warrant, and went back to serve that warrant. So that's how we got to where we are with regard to the warrant.
In court, Underwood's lawyer pushes back against the idea that Mr. Underwood resisted arrest on purpose. According to the lawyer, this wasn't about resisting arrest, but misunderstanding the law. Mr. Underwood didn't believe officers had the proper warrant, so he refused to leave. Once that changed, he cooperated. For bond, the state recommends he wear an ankle monitor and avoid contact with his ex-wife.
Living with him at that residence, and I believe the primary person at that residence is the mother of Mr. Underwood's child. I don't believe they're married, but they do have a child in common. Certain statements were made while situation was going on yesterday with regard to the standoff. A gun was obtained by law enforcement at the time of the arrest. Mr. Underwood did say that was his weapon, and intimated to officers that it was not for use on officers, but it was for use on his child's mother. Given those circumstances, there was also some marijuana in the residence that was turned over to narcotics as well at the time of the arrest. I don't know that any charges have been made with regard to those drugs. That's something that we'll be dealing with at a later date. But for today's purpose, what the state would be asking for is a cash or surety bond. We would request a bond of approximately $50,000. And we also believe that based upon the statements that Mr. Underwood has made, intimating potential harm towards his child's mother, we believe that GPS monitoring, ankle monitor, is appropriate in this case. We would also ask that the bond specifically include provisions prohibiting him from going to her place of work and to her residence. And certainly we can furnish the addresses to the monitoring company so they can go ahead and plug that into the monitor, so they'll be notified if Mr. Underwood goes to either of those places. I think that's all we're asking for today. Any other issues certainly can be taken up at a preliminary hearing or at the appropriate time later on.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
The judge approves the bond conditions, but Officer Underwood's arrogant outburst makes it clear he doesn't take anything seriously.
Officer McCreary?
I really don't have anything else to add to what he said.
Nothing to add?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, Mr. Underwood, I find the solicitor's request for a cash or surety bond of $50,000 to be reasonable accordingly. I'm going to impose that cash or bond for your release.
I find it absurd that you haven't even obtained any information from me based off the solicitor. You're going to believe everything that he says.
Okay.
And you're going to go ahead and set a surety bond on me on a misdemeanor.
Okay. Are you finished? Okay. If you'll hear me out, please. Thank you. Additionally, I'm going to place a requirement for a GPS monitor prior to your release on bond. I'm going to restrain or restrict your contact with your domestic partner or the mother of your child, whichever best describes her, to include her place of work and her residence. Additionally, I'm going to prohibit your physical or constructive possession of firearms or ammunition at any time for any reason. And I want to make sure that you understand, when I say constructive possession, I mean there's to be no firearms or ammunition in any vehicle you're being transported in or riding in unless it's...
What grounds? Are you prohibiting me from firearms?
I am.
Why? What grounds?
I am. Because I have that latitude given the severity of...
What reason is your
Sir.
Why are you standing behind that you're gonna
Mr. Underwood,
firearms?
Mr. Underwood, in this court, one person talks at a time.
From the solicitor's office and the sheriff's office.
You're going to find yourself in contempt of court.
I've already been in contempt.
Okay.
I'm not here, sir.
All right. Are you going to allow me to finish? Constructive possession of firearms or ammunition means you will not have it in your possession. It won't be in the house or the room that you're staying in. It won't be in the vehicle that you're being transported in, unless we're talking about transport by law enforcement. Do you understand that? All right. That's all. You're dismissed. Officer, if you'll remove him.
You can't look at me, can you? You can't look at me, can you? Which one?
Do you have any questions?
The judge set Underwood's bond at $50,000 and ordered him to wear an ankle monitor if released. Even with him yelling insults in court, Underwood somehow avoided more charges. If you enjoyed this video, YouTube thinks you'll like the next one on your screen.